I was a child, and my youthful nightmares of the world ending were filled with dramatic imagery, huge explosions, cosmic impacts, or shambling hordes of the undead. The reality, I've learned, is simply a gradual and silent decline. I was born into the generation that arrived after the planet's vitality was extinguished. The sky has never appeared blue to me. All I've ever seen through the reinforced viewport is a sickly, hazy yellow. My feet have only ever known the texture of a spaceport's ribbed metal deck, never the feel of natural grass. My entire existence feels like a final, drawn-out glance at a world smothered in soot as the ship pulls away. We didn't use the phrase, "children of ash," as some kind of literary flourish. It was a simple, factual statement about our condition. Beyond the physical burdens of genetic material and essential technology, we carried the profound, psychological weight and crushing guilt of abandoning a lifeless, ruined planet that was once our origin. The passage of time on our voyage felt endless. We, the people aboard the Ark Seeker, began to feel less like living passengers and more like spectral figures drifting through the ship's metallic framework. Robots served as our guardians and educators, instructing us using archival records filled with images of pristine forests and boundless oceans, sights that seemed as mythical as any ancient tale of dragons. Then, when our journey to the destination planet, New Hope, was mere months from completion, an utterly unimaginable event took place. A sudden, unprovoked attack materialized from the deep void. These aggressors were nothing like the dignified extraterrestrials of old cinema. They were Cylons, ruthless space marauders, a mass of inhuman destroyers who descended upon our formation with the sole intent of complete eradication. It was not an engagement, it was a brutal massacre. I watched with sickening powerlessness as ships bearing hopeful names like Dawn and Earth's Memory were consumed by fire like fragile paper lanterns. The situation felt utterly hopeless. After an interstellar journey spanning centuries, it seemed we would simply be torn to shreds in the darkness, destined never to lay eyes on our new home. A profound, suffocating despair permeated every deck. Yet, in that moment of ultimate crisis, something unexpected occurred. Our captain, a man whose features were deeply marked by years of struggle, identified a critical vulnerability in the enemy data stream. He revealed that the entire attacking swarm was being governed by a single, powerful mothership, which had skillfully masked itself as a common fighter craft. This reliance on a central, singular consciousness was their critical failing. We committed all our remaining power to a targeted strike. It was a desperate, all-or-nothing gamble for the future of humankind. The vivid, blinding flash, as our focused energy beam vaporized that lone vessel, is seared into my memory. Instantly and miraculously, the cohesion of the Cylon assault force dissolved. They scattered in total confusion, resembling an ant colony whose queen has been abruptly eliminated. Our voyage has resumed its course. The stillness that now hangs over the ship has a new quality. It's not threatening, but deeply thoughtful. We are very close to our arrival point. However, I sometimes find my thoughts turning, not to the lost Earth I never experienced, but to the unlikely fragile kinship that was forged in the heat of that shared terror and subsequent triumph. We spent our lives running from our species' demise, only to confront it head-on in the void, and we endured. Perhaps New Hope will indeed prove to be the home we craved, or perhaps a true home is simply found in the fellowship of those you have faced insurmountable adversity with, in the small flicker of life we succeeded in carrying across the immense, cold gulf of space. We are united in our resolve that no one will ever extinguish that spark again. Can you grasp the irony of working on an immense undertaking that every single one of its creators genuinely resented? The construction of our evacuation fleet, these monumental, shining spaceships, was precisely that kind of effort. Officially, we referred to them as ARCs, but among ourselves, the more common and honest term was tin cans. My personal vessel was designated Seeker 7. My role was as a member of the engineering crew, literally involving the simple task of securing bolts onto the internal chassis plates. Picture this: the enormous, imposing form of the ship, like a vast mechanical body, and inside it, thousands of engineers, scrambling about with wrenches like tiny ants. It was simultaneously the most historically significant and the most utterly heartbreaking construction project. We were diligently building what amounted to our own coffin as salvation, and we often joked that our most crucial mission wasn't even to survive, but to ensure the sanitation bay's access panel wouldn't detach during the very first major maneuver. The actual departure was nothing like a grand cinematic launch. It was a desperate scramble under a bleak, acidic sky. Huge, monstrous vehicles ripped themselves from the planet, leaving behind a wasteland of incinerated launch sites and the wreckage of what was once our civilization. Inside the vessel, the atmosphere was chaotic. Half-functional systems, leaky plumbing, and a draft carrying the scent of electrical discharge and deep fear. The technical crew rapidly became indispensable figures on board, holding the key knowledge, like the specific kick needed to fix the oxygen flow in Sector G, which simultaneously made us objects of both intense respect and resentment. As months bled into years, the vessel, often derided as a tin can, transformed into our permanent habitat. We adapted to the perpetual low-frequency vibration of the engines and developed an intuitive understanding of every sound, discerning harmless metal stress from critical structural issues. We forged a peculiar society, a mix of former engineers and builders who now found themselves reluctant passengers within the creation they had constructed. This new dynamic led to absurd daily interactions, such as a crew member being stopped in a hallway by a fellow passenger complaining about a draft, forcing the technician to recall personally installing the poorly sealed panel a decade prior that was a direct link to space. Their only advice in such a crisis was to place a potted plant there. Reflecting on the journey, I now see that these crude, rapidly assembled ugly ducklings became a profound mirror image of ourselves, flawed, hastily put together with whatever materials were at hand, yet surprisingly enduring. We failed to construct flawless, mythical arcs. Instead, we launched floating monuments to our own sheer obstinacy. It was perhaps this unyielding spirit, this dark ability to find humor amid catastrophe, that preserved our collective sanity. Daily living within the confines of our imperfect, self-made refuge forces an acceptance of one's own limitations. Our survival was not thanks to a master plan, but an unlikely triumph against the odds, resting on what we had managed to weld and hammer together with our own hands. Imagine a lifetime defined by the same view from a viewport, an absolute, empty blackness, punctuated only by distant, uncaring specks of light. I have lived my entire 23 years aboard the Seeker 7. We, the Star Path generation, have no direct memory of Earth. It is merely an abstract collection of faded textbook pictures and the increasingly fictionalized accounts from the older crew members. Our entire existence is encapsulated by this ship's sterile, white corridors, the ceaseless drone of its machinery, and air that smells of machine oil and profound sadness. The greatest source of our underlying anxiety is the total uncertainty about our final destination, whether the planet we are headed for is even habitable, or if the entire mission is a cosmic deception intended solely to ward off complete despair. Our ship functions as both a giant repository of human history and the actual tomb of that civilization. We maintain a natural history hall, where I recall trying to touch the holographic images of creatures long extinct. Our libraries house countless volumes detailing green forests and blue seas, concepts that feel as fantastical to me as tales of sunken continents. We study these elements as foreign objects, relics left behind by a dead society that we once belonged to. Occasionally, one of the older passengers, whose eyes still hold a faint memory of the Earth's real sky, attempts to describe the scent of rainfall or the feeling of walking on grass. While we nod politely, we can't truly grasp it. Our feet have only ever known the unyielding surface of a metal floor. Our current existence feels like a bizarre theatrical production, an ongoing blend of tragedy and comedy. We rigorously adhere to ancient protocols meant for catastrophes that have never materialized in our lifetime, practicing drills for attacks and fires that remain purely theoretical. The unyielding, stone-faced captain meticulously reviews daily reports on our spatial coordinates, acting as if a wrong turn could send us veering into an asteroid field. This relentless routine is merely a mechanism to sustain the pretense of purpose, a deliberate ritual to banish the haunting uncertainty that asks, what if our journey has already ended and we just don't know it? However, there are moments that sharply cut through the mundane and reveal the depth of our true mission. A few months past, our instruments intercepted a faint yet consistent transmission originating from the direction of our intended planet. This wasn't just abstract data. It was a complex biological signature, strongly suggesting the presence of both an atmosphere and water. On that day, the ship fell into an eerie hush, broken only by quiet weeping. The old members of the crew sobbed openly while gazing at the readouts. For the first time, the younger generation saw the goal not as an abstract coordinate, but as a tangible destination. It instantly transformed our flight from a pursuit of a ghost into a final approach. Now, this thrilling anxiety, this constant tremor in my hands as I look out, is far more daunting than the empty void ever was, because the moment of truth is approaching. Will our long-held faith be rewarded, or are we just specters drifting in perpetual night? Can you grasp the sensation of sailing for a century only to completely lose sight of your original objective? We have become the generation whose entire existence is defined by the voyage itself. This ship, our metal chrysalis, ceased being a means to an end and became, quite simply, our entire world. We were born in its sterile halls, breathed its recycled atmosphere, and looked out at the same unchanging patterns of stars. The New Hope planet gradually slipped from being a concrete goal to becoming little more than a comforting myth, a mere bedtime story for the newly born. The crew no longer rebelled or grew angry. Instead, quietly, like a fading lamp, we collectively abandoned the belief that there was an end of the road awaiting us. We had evolved into cosmic wanderers, eternally bound to our own profound apathy. Life proceeded according to its illogical rhythm. We marked birthdays, formed marriages, and raised children, entire generations whose only known home was this vibrating steel cylinder. The elders who carried genuine memories of Earth had passed away long ago, taking with them the actual sensation of a breeze and the true hue of the sky. Their narratives became as unbelievable to us as the tales of long-lost civilizations like Atlantis. We went to such lengths to imitate normalcy that the pretense became our ingrained reality. The bleakest joke circulating among the crew was, "We've already arrived. The captain just forgot to tell us." While we laughed, that joke held a painful kernel of truth. We felt utterly adrift. Then, without any dramatic flourish or grand announcement, it finally happened. As I was consuming my usual flavorless nutritional paste on a typical morning, a single, crystal-clear image materialized across every monitor on the ship. It wasn't a technical diagram or a spreadsheet of sensor data. It was a photograph, a planet. Not a hazy point through a telescope, but a perfect sphere, complete with recognizable continental outlines, great swirls of atmospheric clouds, and a shade of blue I had only ever witnessed in ancient historical footage. An absolute, startling silence descended, so profound that even the ship's perpetual hum seemed to stop. Then, one voice, quiet and filled with awe, whispered, "We're home." A collective, shaky breath swept through the ship, not a shout of triumph, but a deep, shuddering release of 100 years of pent-up fear, relief, and the terrifying weight of a fulfilled mission. We now stand just a few months from our destination, and this final stretch is far more terrifying than the entirety of the long void we crossed. The realization has struck us. We were never just simple refugees. We are an ark, the final repository of human life, and this vital seed is on the verge of being planted in new ground. When we look at that distant planet, we see not merely a fresh start, but a colossal monument to our lost Earth and the birthplace of an utterly unknown future. This immense burden, the responsibility of being a bridge between two worlds, is finally forcing us out of our century-long stupor. Our faith has been restored, and that profound belief is what now fills us with dread. I have personally witnessed space tear itself apart. What's truly absurd is that this cataclysm occurred at the most ridiculous moment possible. We were in the middle of our annual frivolous carrot cake day, a silly tradition designed to inject some cheer into the monotony of endless travel. I was queuing up for my slice of the sticky treat, deep in a pointless debate with Engineer Petrov about the authenticity of cake made with synthetic carrot powder. Suddenly, every light on the ship failed, replaced by a deep scarlet emergency glow, and the background music was violently overridden by a blood-curdling siren. That is how the most trivial and the most terrifying day of our lives commenced. Initially, we dismissed the alarm as just another routine combat exercise. However, my gaze fell upon the main screen in the mess hall. Emerging from the blackness, like a predatory swarm of aquatic life, they appeared. Thousands of oddly shaped vessels, immediately classified by our computer system as Cylons. Though the name meant nothing, the sight of their fighters relentlessly dismantling our external sensor arrays was perfectly clear. Mass chaos instantly erupted. People collided in the corridors, some desperately trying to aid those injured in the first impacts. Covered in synthetic cake frosting, I felt utterly useless and ridiculous. We had prepared for every scenario except an attack by space raiders during our annual dessert celebration. The brief spell of disorder was quickly shattered. The captain's voice, calm but edged with steel, cut through the pervasive panic. He immediately stated that a direct fight was impossible due to the enemy's overwhelming numbers. Yet, he also pointed out a key detail. The enemy's highly synchronized attack suggested a single puppet master was at work. That puppeteer, he surmised, was a large mothership cleverly concealed among the multitude of smaller fighters. Our crippling fear was instantly replaced by a sharp, furious focus. Every available person, the technicians, the engineers, even the kitchen staff, rushed to the nearest terminals to support the few operators, in sifting through a deluge of telemetry data to locate that one crucial anomaly. We ultimately succeeded in finding it. A faint, barely detectable blip at the very edge of the scanner, flickering with an irregular pattern. We rapidly transmitted the coordinates to the bridge. A focused weapons volley was immediately ordered. The moment our weapons annihilated that mothership, the Cylons' highly disciplined attack instantly dissolved into disarray. Their ships became erratic, colliding with one another as if their central command had been violently severed. we survived the assault. Now, as I look out at the stars, my mind dwells not on the battle itself, but on that carrot cake. It serves as a stark reminder of our human nature, our compulsion to argue over insignificant details even at the very brink of extinction. It is precisely this stubborn, illogical humanity that forms our greatest defense, and it is what undeniably saved us that day. If I had been told years ago that my future involved battling space pirates, I would have dismissed it as a ridiculous notion fueled by too much synthesized alcohol. Yet, here I am, stationed at the counter-torpedo shield controls on the Seeker's Bridge, staring at a screen displaying a sight that freezes the blood. The Cylon ships, silent, swift, and utterly merciless, are emerging from the darkness like a massive, luminous swarm. There are thousands of them. Our captain, whose composure rarely wavers, clutches the back of my chair with white knuckles and states quietly that this is not a conflict for survival. It is an outright massacre, and we are squarely in their crosshairs. The initial strike was devastatingly bright. Green energy beams sliced through space, causing our port stabilizer to erupt in brilliant flames. The impact made the entire ship tremble violently, like a wounded creature. All power failed, replaced by the grim, crimson glow of the emergency lights. Around me, there was the blare of sirens, the noise of shattering debris, and muffled screams. My partner, Lena, elbow deep in oil, struggled to patch a rupture in the cooling system. I desperately pounded my controls, trying to bring the shields online, but they were agonizingly slow. One enemy fighter shot so close past the viewport that I glimpsed bizarre, non-human symbols etched onto its hull. This was no longer a theoretical peril. It was a concrete enemy determined to eradicate us. Despite the surrounding bedlam, the most terrifying thing wasn't the sound of explosions, but the monotonous, automated voice of our warning system, cold-bloodedly listing the sections currently undergoing decompression. Every name announced represented the loss of dozens of lives, people I knew. I watched in horror as the cruiser Harmony, our companion for decades, suffered a direct hit to its engine core and began to split in two, slowly and eerily gracefully. The silence that followed its destruction was absolute. In that awful moment, all traces of hope and dark humor evaporated, leaving behind only profound dread and the bone-deep knowledge that our ship was next. Then, an immediate switch flipped. Perhaps it was a primordial survival response, or perhaps it was pure, simple fury. The captain bellowed the command to execute steel claw maneuvers, a desperate suicide-level tactic we'd only ever run in simulations. We instantly ceased defending and launched a counterattack. Lena, heedless of the burns on her hands, manually diverted power from our life support systems directly into the weapons array. I bypassed every safety measure to push the shields far beyond their limits. We weren't fighting for the abstract survival of the human race. In that instant, we were fighting for the raw, immediate goal of ensuring the next blast didn't tear through our own compartment. This intensely simple, primal focus suddenly brought a strange, intense calm. It was a binary choice, us or them. Have you ever witnessed the extinguishing of stars? Not the cosmic ones, but the ships that represented entire miniature worlds. I'm staring at the main tactical display, and it appears like a night sky where someone is violently blotting out constellations. Every darkened icon signifies more than just a combat loss. That was the Albatross, where my brother served. That was the Harmony, carrying the vital gene bank of all Earth's flora. That was the Dawn, where children were holding a drawing contest just 60 minutes earlier. They simply vanish, silently and swiftly, one after another. The resulting radio silence is far more frightening than any explosion. We are not just suffering setbacks. Right here, Before my very eyes, we are simultaneously losing both our past and our future. Initially, we attempted to keep a precise tally of the casualties, but the effort soon became utterly futile, and we abandoned it. Our once proud fleet was rapidly being obliterated, dissolving with the speed of an ice cube exposed to intense heat. I watched the cruiser Prometheus, after its reactor section was hit, begin its slow, strangely elegant disintegration. First, there was a blinding flash, followed by the complete extinguishing of the lights in its portholes, and finally, a chilling silence on the communication lines. A few seconds later, the faint, percussive chime of debris striking our hull served as a constant funeral bell, a sound we were hearing far too often, as we, the sluggish, massive ships, were systematically torn apart by this swarm of glowing, predatory enemies. The most agonizing phase began not during the attack's surprise, but after the initial shock wore off. It was replaced by an immense, suffocating weight of impending doom that was almost palpable. We were actively witnessing the final, slow-motion destruction of the last remnants of human existence. These Cylon invaders didn't engage in dialogue or demand surrender. They simply and thoroughly destroyed, operating with the cold, efficient precision of a cosmic cleaning crew. In that grim realization, you can't help but feel precisely what they intend, that you are nothing more than debris, a mistake being systematically eradicated from the void. But then, an extraordinary thing happened. The handful of remaining ships, battered and holed, began an instinctive, unspoken maneuver to converge. They spontaneously formed a protective barrier, a living shield around the last civilian transports, which carried the women, children, and the few artifacts we salvaged from Earth. No command was issued. It was a collective, immediate action. In that very moment, something deep inside me changed. The paralyzing despair didn't vanish, but it was pushed aside by a strange, resolute calm. If this was indeed the absolute end, we would meet it protecting what mattered most until our final breath. This awareness of being guardians, not just victims, provided a greater surge of resilience than any faint hope of rescue ever could. How do you expose the fatal flaw in a seemingly perfect, unbeatable enemy? The solution didn't come from advanced supercomputers or high-tech intelligence gathering. It came from an obscure, nearly forgotten anecdote that someone recalled at the absolute worst possible time. We were on the brink of collapse. Our fleet had been reduced to pathetic, burning wreckage. I was staring at the tactical map, watching our ship symbols disappear one by one, certain the end was here. Then, a young intern from the Prometheus, a ship miraculously still in one piece, broadcast over the general comms. Listen, they are behaving exactly like the mutant fireflies from Moon 3. Remember how they flew in a tight swarm until they crashed their leader? In the intense quiet, the comment sounded like the most absurd joke, but that single, unlikely piece of memory is what ultimately saved us all. Up until that critical moment, the Cylons had appeared to be a flawless fighting machine. Their coordinated attacks were lethally precise, giving us zero opportunity to retaliate. We were simply burning through our last reserves of energy, firing without effect. But after that strange observation, we viewed them through a different lens. The intern was right. At the nucleus of every attacking formation, there was always one unique ship that remained dormant. It did not fire, but was instead pulsating, emitting distinct energy bursts. The entire swarm's maneuvers were executed in perfect synchronization with these pulses. This ship was clearly their conductor, their central brain. As long as this core remained untouched, destroying the surrounding swarm was impossible. They would instantly reform and cover one another with incomprehensible precision, allowing us only to scratch their periphery. The sheer challenge of locating this critical conductor amidst the deadly chaos surrounded by thousands of indistinguishable enemy vessels, was akin to searching for a tiny needle within an explosive, blazing haystack. We endured devastating losses, simply attempting to pierce their defenses. The destruction of the cruiser Harmony was not in vain, as it managed to transmit crucial data about the enemy's pulses just before its end. This became a brutal, desperate hunt. We blindly groped for the anomaly, constantly losing ships, friends, and our last reserves of hope. Each passing second extracted a horrific price in lives. The irony was profound. The absolute synchronization that formed their strength was simultaneously their single greatest vulnerability, meaning the destruction of just one ship would cause their entire operating system to collapse. The moment our targeting systems finally achieved a lock on the pulsating mothership, an absolute silence descended upon the bridge. We understood immediately that this was our one and only chance. We prepared to fire every single weapon we had left in a unified volley. All the surviving vessels diverted every available unit of power to their weapons arrays, leaving their shields and life support functioning at barely minimum levels. It was a terrifying, absolute gamble. When our combined energy beam tore through the conductor and the perfectly disciplined Cylon formation instantly devolved into a swarm of chaotic, colliding wrecks, the feeling was not one of celebration, but a profound, icy relief. We had survived, though the human cost of that survival remains a nightmare I carry every night. Do you want to know what the turning point in a space battle truly tastes like? It is the combined scent of burning insulation, ozone-charged air, and pure sweat. And it sounds like a sudden, roaring cry of "Hooray!" that manages to pierce through the deafening static of the general channel. The entire reversal began with a simple, quiet suggestion from our onboard engineer. He theorized that to maintain such flawless coherence, these Cylon brains had to communicate on a highly specific, extremely narrow frequency. If we could pinpoint that channel and blast it with a powerful static pulse, it would be equivalent to shouting directly into someone's ear while they attempt to solve a complex mathematical problem. The entire theory sounded utterly insane, yet we had literally nothing left to lose. Our ship, the Hephaestus, was one of the few left with an intact and fully functional powerful sensor array. We effectively transformed our cruiser into a massive, listening ear, scanning the entire spectrum. This was an arduous, hellish task, manually filtering out the cacophony of the ongoing battle, the explosions, and the screams, all in a desperate attempt to isolate that one, perfectly steady signal. All around us, the chaos raged on. The vessel Ajax self-destructed while providing critical cover, buying us the final, crucial seconds we needed. And then, we found it. A faint, almost imperceptible, but incredibly stable stream of data emanating from a single ship at the very center of the overwhelming enemy formation. From that point forward, the plan was both straightforward and terrifying. We diverted every last drop of remaining power from the shields and life support directly to the communication system. This move was one of suicidal desperation. Any single Cylon fighter could now instantly destroy us. However, they never got the opportunity. When our sudden, powerful distorting pulse struck that specific frequency, the outcome was astonishing. The enemy ships, those flawless mechanical warriors, instantly froze. Their perfect synchronization completely vanished, causing them to collide violently with one another. They were suddenly reduced to a disordered orchestra, with every musician inexplicably playing their own tune. A collective, powerful shout of "Hooray!" erupted throughout the ranks, a cry that was less about achieving victory and more a raw explosion of pent-up anger, sorrow for the fallen, and a fierce, desperate clinging to hope. Our retreat ceased immediately. We began to push forward, making every subsequent shot count. Our new priority was targeting the specific ships that attempted to restore central communications, effectively preventing the Cylons from establishing a new brain. Witnessing their supposedly invincible fleet degrade into a mass of helpless, colliding wreckage brought me to a profound conclusion. No amount of superior technology can defeat the sheer audacity of the doomed, who have successfully identified a critical weakness. We prevailed not because we were the stronger force, but because we proved to be the more ingenious one. And in that moment, ingenuity was everything. Have you ever held the fate of every human being in existence in your two hands? I certainly hadn't, until now. At this very moment, that future is symbolized by a single, flickering cursor on a tactical display, tracking the small, battered remnants of our fleet, closing in on the final, most formidable Cylon warship. We have traversed half a galaxy, buried our companions, and learned to fight with these makeshift, unlovely tin cans, and everything hinges on this solitary instant in an obscure region of space. We will either force our way through to new hope, or we will instantly become another insignificant cosmic dust cloud. The absurdity of it all is that my nose is relentlessly itchy, and my cumbersome spacesuit prevents me from scratching it. This is the true reality of the apocalypse. Our captain, typically a man as still and silent as stone, addressed all the survivors over the comms. He did not speak of glory or duty, but plainly stated that the single Cylon ship remaining contained all their core command systems. He guaranteed that destroying it would fully clear our path to the planet. He also candidly assessed our chances as being about the same as a snowball surviving in hell. Yet, we have long since grown accustomed to this kind of fiery climate. I look at the scorched, breached hull of our seeker and realize that, despite its damage, this scarred vessel can still move. Or, more accurately, it is about to fly into its final, ultimate attack. The launch of our last remaining torpedoes felt utterly surreal. The sheer force of the launch shook the entire ship, making it feel like it was moments from atomizing. We charged directly toward the enemy, our ships covering each other with the failing remnants of our energy shields. The Cylons hammered us with everything they had left. One of our sister cruisers, the Hephaestus, absorbed a direct hit and exploded directly in front of us, its disintegrating debris providing a crucial, momentary shield for our vessel, a final, generous act. Then, we unleashed our own volley, every projectile we had left. We watched as that immense, black Cylon Leviathan was instantly illuminated from within by the catastrophic fire of our explosions. The silence that followed was absolute and deafening. Now, we are on the final approach to the planet. It dominates the viewport, a swirling sphere of blue and green, intensely real. And my nose, still maddeningly itchy, is now a source of dark humor. Because down there will be real grass. And if fate is feeling especially kind, there might even be mosquitoes to complain about. And honestly, enduring all of this hell was worth it for the chance to complain about a simple insect. We succeeded. It was a messy, non-heroic, brutal feat accomplished with bloodshed and cursing, but the mission is complete. My next and scariest challenge is to learn to live not in constant fear of death, but with the daunting anticipation of the morning.